Joining us this week on Socratic Spotlight is Michaelah Glenn, a current 11th grader at TSE, going into her second year with us. She's interested in art, very artistically inclined, ceramics, it sounds like, and several other mediums of art. And she has a really compelling story about how TSE helped her improve her SAT scores. But before we get into that, I want to just ask you, Michaelah, to tell us a little bit about how you came to TSE, what you were doing for school prior to TSE, and how TSE compares as a school compared to whatever else you were doing before.
Well, when I've been homeschooled for a very long time, since like second grade, and it's been a very on and off journey between trying to find good programs, trying to, make sure that my parents have time for them to find worksheets and programs for me. And so last year, we decided that I should go into a very structured program because I need one thing that helps me grow, especially in academics, is a very structured, scheduled, process and program. So we had a couple of options, but the Socratic experience was the one that really stood out to me. It was my first time choosing my program, choosing my school that I got to go to. So I was drawn to the fact that, it's a very free, open approach here, and the student led environment that is taught here, like the whole Socratic method really aligned with my life and how I already kind of experiencing things with my parents, and even how I was experiencing things in my older schools. It was very much student led, very much that kind of very nice comfortable environment for me. So being here, it was a great step in, it was like the more mature version of that, which was perfect for me.
That's awesome. So, why were you looking for more structure compared to your homeschool experience?
I found that with my just general homeschooling, like the process that my parents and I were taking, it was really making me fall behind. It's funny because it wasn't really that we were falling behind from the school system, like generally, but we were falling behind for my family. I had skipped like a grade or two when I was younger, mainly due to the fact that, when you're homeschooled, people don't pay a whole lot of attention to your grades or what grade you're in. So I I decided that when I got here that I wanted to be in 10th grade because I had the option to redo ninth grade and possibly redo eighth grade. But I wanted to have that challenge, and I work best when I'm challenged. And that was something that I wasn't particularly getting just with my general homeschool. So that's why we decided, okay, maybe you need to be in an environment with other people. So that's really helped a lot.
We talk a lot at the Socratic experience about the importance of cultivating a culture of purpose. And so what I'm getting from you is that homeschooling, for some people, obviously homeschooling works really well, but it sounds like there wasn't such an emphasis on purpose, at least the way you guys are doing homeschooling. And so how has the culture of purpose at TSE helped you towards, setting goals and kind of putting you on the path that you are today?
Absolutely. It's really interesting because this makes me think of, I have some friends that have been homeschooled, and we used to homeschool together. And one of my friends recently, he just got into Berkeley just from homeschooling. And it's amazing to see how for some people, you know, that drive more comes naturally to them. So even though I feel like it does come naturally to me, I need a lot to keep that drive there. So I feel like it's a very freeing, homeschool is very much like, oh, you can do what you want, and you can, have fun with it, and which I think is great for certain people. And honestly, it was great for me because when I had gotten out of like traditional like public private school, um I was very stressed out part of that was because in my older school, there was a lot of pressure, I'll say that, on me as being young and being as many grades ahead. Like I was in classes at 7 with 12-year-olds. And so when I got out, I just didn't want to do it anymore. And so it was great to be able to relax and, do things at my own pace. However, as I've become a teenager, I've realized that I need a certain push. I need to also be held accountable for certain things. I feel like at TSE, my mentors were able to talk about things, and I'm able to bring up ideas and concepts that I've had and that I want to do. And they're like, well, why don't you just do it? Like, just go and talk to this person, go get that person's number, do all of this so that you can reach your final goal. And it really makes me hold myself accountable so that, when I go into my mentor meeting and I haven't finished something, I'm like, man, I didn't finish that. Instead of feeling just sitting and feeling bad for myself, my mentor is like, go do it. So it, they really push you here in a very healthy way. It really keeps you on track when it comes to your ideas and hopes and dreams. I hope that answers your question, but I appreciate having that from outside, people outside of my parents, because I love my parents and they've done amazing. But sometimes I find that certain people, me included, some occasionally need guidance from other people. And I feel like here at TSC, between my actual literal guides and just like the things that we learn, I get so much help that it's honestly, there's no excuse to not do something because I have all the help that I need.
I think that factor is probably so important, just knowing that you have a scheduled meeting with somebody and they're going to ask you, what is your progress? How is your progress going on X, Y, and Z? It's not really rigid like public school, of course, but ultimately, that they're going to ask about it. And so even as adults, we tend to make a lot of excuses, procrastinate, whatever. But I feel like I would benefit maybe sometimes from having somebody like hold me accountable in my personal life. So that's really cool. Do you feel like the peer culture at TSE holds you accountable as well, or is it namely just the mentorship program?
I would most definitely say that, being around my peers, especially the people here, um, they're very much, we're all weirdly mature. And so it's honestly a breath of fresh air because whenever I'm in my class, especially in like humanities class where it's more of a, I would say, more open discussion where we can kind of go into lanes of controversial things and things that might spark larger conversations. um they really make me think about what I say before I say it. It's so common that people that I'm around outside of TSC, it's very easy just to be like, you could just say something, they don't question you on it, and you can move on. But here they're like, why did you say that, Michaelah? What makes you think this? And then you have to really sit there and think, oh, why did I think this? And so it's amazing because I've grown, I feel like, so much with my own self-esteem because of the fact that like the things that I know are right, because I've been questioned on it, I now am confident in myself to say, no, that's right. This is correct and this is incorrect. And I no longer feel like I have to be in like this little shell, like, oh, I can't say anything. I should just sit back. So it's great. And just to be able to have people of all different types of backgrounds, that's that's something personally that I really like, because of the fact that like you have people of all sorts of like just general religious backgrounds to just racial backgrounds, everything. We all come with different experiences. So to be able to sit in a classroom with people who could be all over the world, and so we can all talk about the same discussion and each get different views on it and be able to discuss that openly and not like, you know, oh, ridicule you, I'm gonna ridicule you. It's very open and it's really nice, especially in this day and age where it's kind of like a weird hostile thing. But it's great. It's great.
I emphasize this a lot in my conversations with parents that we do have a very diverse student body and staff. You know, parents are often asking me, what is your position on X, Y, and Z? What is your essentially, I think schools unfortunately have become kind of a political battleground. And, you know, I say probably 70% of our students are US based, but we have so many international students. We have so many families, you know, that lean liberal, conservative, religious, non-religious, and it's just a really respectful environment. There really is no agenda, and I think that would you say the Socratic method format is conducive to getting people to engage in a respectful manner and in a mutually beneficial way where they can really like understand the other person's point of view, but even like respectfully agree to disagree sometimes?
Yes. it's it's amazing just the thought of, because I remember last year in my class we discussed the literal whole Socratic method. Like we read it, we were like, okay, this is what we're doing. But now I've like forgotten the exact definition, of course. But it's it's so important to be able to have that, I keep saying like open environment. It's open, but also they're true conversations. They're not just purely, um, oh, we're just gonna accept everything. Um, but we're also not going to discriminate or diminish your opinion, period. I think that's really important. And it becomes, even with certain, like even if conversations do turn political, it's always like, okay, let's sit and actually think about this, right? As a logical topic with no emotions involved, which is incredible for a bunch of like 15, 16, and 17-year-olds to do. And to be able to actually sit and have like real conversations where it's legitimately, we're really getting somewhere. Like we're changing each other's ideas, but also, but not in a way that's like trying to make each other change our perspectives on things. So it's, you end up leaving a conversation with actual things to think about that like are actually good points. And so you have to go and research things. I can't tell you how many times I've left my class and been like, oh, I actually need to research that, or I need to, I really need to look into that. And it changed my view on something. It's it's amazing.
Yeah, it's something that a lot of adults are lacking in. And I think coming in on, kind of on that level playing field where everyone is in the same position, everyone's equal in the Socratic method, everyone's there for an exchange of ideas. There's no you know, you just think that because of this or like, you know, those types of accusations and stuff. It really is just like purely intellectual, right? An exploration of ideas. So that's super cool. What classes are you taking this semester?
I am taking uh, a STEM with Mr. Clifton Mobs, and I'm taking humanities. I'm taking modernism, the modernism era humanities with Mr. Luis Melgar. Yeah, okay. um, and then I'm taking Algebra 1 Math Mastery with Mr. Wandelay.
How is the math program? It sounds like you're more creatively inclined. So I don't know what your relationship is to math in your prior school experiences, but how has the math program treated you here?
It's been it's been amazing, honestly. So something that I plan on doing, I do plan on trying to graduate, and well, I I'm deciding on whether or not I want to graduate super early or if I just want to graduate, regular time. Um, and one of the things that I've been looking into is like any sort of like high school equivalency test if I want to graduate earlier. And so being in math mastery, I've been able to, just with the math mastery plus the tutoring, has really helped me a lot because my math has not always been spot on. um, and I remember coming in when I learned that my parents were going to put me in a math class, which I did not know initially. But then they had told me, and I was like, no, I don't like math. and so going into it, I really didn't have very high expectations. But, being in class, like, even though, like, we get assigned, and so usually we end up doing a lot of assigned work, in like little breakout rooms, and we work by ourselves, which I personally find very helpful. But just, you come into the room and just the kids there, everyone's hilarious, everyone's laughing, having fun. Mr. Wanderley is just like egging everybody on, like, yeah, let's have fun. And like then on Fridays we do like group work. So we'll Mr. Wanderley will come with a question. And we as a class, sometimes it'll take us more than one Friday, but usually as a class we'll all work together to figure out the problem, and we'll like ask each other questions like, oh, well, I don't think it's five. Why do you think it's five? And it's a great environment because I'm able to have the perfect amount of, I would say more informal work where it's not like super structured. Like I came here coming off of just purely like Khan Academy for good like 5 years. And part of the reason why I did not like math was because of Khan Academy. I was like, there's no one to talk to. I don't know what I'm doing. This is too much. And so to be able to come here and actually be able to go and ask questions, like, even though I don't use tutoring as much anymore, I do think that part of that is because I had started using tutoring during more of the earlier parts of this year. But then I slowly realized, like, oh, wait, I think I got this. Like, I think I'm able to really do this. And between my mentor, Mr. Clifton, and Mr. Wandelay, we've been able to really make sure that I have a concrete schedule. So I'll do math outside of class or math that I haven't been assigned so that I can get ahead a little bit, because I have a lot of plans with my math. I want to be able to try to get into geometry really soon. So, I've been able to take, chapter tests that, just blaze me ahead. Like, we were, as a class, we were actually behind for a moment. Um, but then I was able to, really, I was behind. And so I talked to Mr. Wanderley. I was like, you know what? I think I need to blaze ahead. I think that's what needs to happen. And now I went from doing the first maybe two sections of, chapter one in algebra. Now I'm all the way in the last chapter and I'm blazing through it. And it's honestly amazing because I'm able to have that feedback and ask Mr. Wanderley and like everyone a tutoring session, or like I'm able to ask them questions and get clarity. And it's something that I really needed in math, like with that feedback from like real people. So yeah, I keep saying it, but it's great. It's amazing.
I think that so many of us adults looking back on our public school experience, I went to public school from kindergarten all the way through, and I had a really unhealthy relationship with math as well. I think that the tutoring here is extremely valuable, like an extremely valuable component of the program because it's so accessible. And when you're in public school, it can be really intimidating asking the math teacher for help, after class and stuff like that. They often don't want to deal with you. They don't have time. You're just kind of a number to them sometimes. So I'm really excited to hear all that praise for the math program and the math tutoring program specifically. What electives are you taking this semester?
I'm actually not taking any
Okay,
electives.
okay. Are you in the accredited program or non-accredited?
I think I'm in the non-accredited. At least that's what, I know for now. But I do ask my teachers for grades.
Okay, cool. What did you do last year for your personal project? I know that you mentioned that you're yet to kind of put together a personal project for this year. We're kind of early in the year right now, but what did you do last year?
Last year, unfortunately, I was not able to finish it, but I did have a very elaborate plan. Last year I had been writing a book. So my goal was to finish the book. That didn't happen. But I was able to start like getting some ideas across. And last year, Ms. Leigh was my mentor, and she was like all for it. So it was great because I would write a chapter and I would send it to her, and she'd read it. She'd be like, "Oh, this is great." Write a chapter and send it to her. So it was a great start. And then also last year, I did have a plan to do my own art show or have an art show somewhere. That's probably going to trickle into this year because I have more resources to be able to get that done this year. But yeah, so that's really where I'm at with my personal project.
Cool. How do you feel like you've touched on it obviously quite a bit already, but you mentioned like ceramics, art as some of your interests. How have you been able to incorporate that into the program?
Okay, this is a great question because last year, and I'm excited about it this year, but last year I was able to do a poem actually. Well, I actually did two poems for two of my assignments that I had last year. And one of them, I was able to do a picture of with one of the poems, which was like I was able to draw. I did it digitally, but I drew a picture. It was supposed to be the assignment was to write something in the style of something that we had read already. So I decided to, I don't know if you've heard of the poet Sappho, but I decided to, I loved when we read that poetry. So I decided to do two poems from my own characters that I actually had in that story that I was trying to write last year. And it was amazing. It was incredible. I had songs to go with it. I had the picture, I had the poetry. It was amazing. And so um, just honestly by I guess another one of my interests I could say would be poetry now. Um, because I've actually never really done poetry before. Like I've dabbled, but to be able to actually like do it and show it to people last year and really get into like the power of words is incredible. Like and it was just amazing um to see how much I could really tap into my own emotions when it comes to poetry. And that opened up a whole new door, especially when it comes to like now I'm really into mixed media because um just that one time that I was able to do that poetry with like the music and the picture, all of those things combined was one of the most perfect displays of emotion that I've ever done. And it was great to be able to be in an environment where it wasn't just like you have to do an essay, right? Because an essay was like an option. Like I could have done an essay, but I ended up doing actually like two or three essays by the end of the year. But it was great to be able to just express myself and that be like, no, that's her assignment. Her assignment is this entire display of a range of media. And that now all like that's almost all I do. Like for this year, actually, it's due next week. But one of my assignments from my humanities class is to write either an essay or a short story. I decided to write a short story just because I usually take the non-essay route. But yeah, it's exciting because it's all of these things always open up new parts of my brain. So I'm able to, just with this story, I've already, even though this is just the first draft, I'm not even finished with it. Like I've already been able to delve into this very descriptive. I find that I now have a writing style. I didn't really know that, but I find that I write very descriptively, and that is very important to me because one thing that I love about art, but also cannot seem to grasp about art, is the fact that you can be very emotion forward with art. And one thing that I'm trying to do, even though I absolutely love art and I'm planning to go to arts college, I have not been able to really tap into that, very expression, like emotional part into my art. So being able to write has truly helped. It's helped so much to be able to just go onto synonym.com and like find all these new words that, what's funny is I barely even use them in my normal vocabulary, but I use them in my writing and it changes and it helps. And it like I said before, it opens so many new doors of art for me. And I would have probably never like I probably would have never even touched poetry if we didn't read it in class. Like I've had poetry. My grandma used to write poetry for me. It was great. It's just I never thought that I could write poetry. So to be able to have that experience has been great. And I practically begged Mr. Luis this year for me to be able to do poetry, but he was like, "You have to do what I assign." So I chose the closest thing to poetry that I could get.
You mentioned it sounds like there is a little bit of rigidity, at least in that one class, but we do try to emphasize flexibility at the Socratic experience, and there's a ton of student input. Student input is something that we really value, and I think that's embodied obviously in the mentorship meetings. But I was just thinking about everyone who spends time in traditional school, almost everything, there's very little student agency whatsoever. And I think we all who went through the system, we can look back at our time in school and say, like for me, for example, I was forced to take Spanish. And now I kind of think, why didn't I try harder in Spanish? It would be so valuable to know Spanish. And I kind of remember some of it, but for the most part, I think because I was forced to take it, I just had a bad attitude about it the whole time. I just didn't feel like it was very relevant to me at the time. And so I think it's cool at TSE that you can incorporate your interests into the program, that it allows that flexibility. Sometimes the classes can be tailored specifically to your interests versus, and you mentioned like doing essays on specifically on something that you might be interested in, I think is what you were talking about, versus like very top down, the teacher says you have to write it on this specific topic, and you also then don't have to spend extra time like pursuing your interests outside of class, plus worrying about the irrelevant homework that you might have in traditional school.
Yeah, and it's really because in both of my classes, even with the essays themselves, like even though me personally, I'm much more of a fictional, I like to do fictional works and things like that. But even with the essays, they're always open. They're very open because my teachers both times have been like, this is pretty much the format, but you can choose whatever you want to write about. Like I remember last year, someone wrote about like a story about horses. It was great, but it was like, as long as it's nonfiction, like you can write about it. And last year I had a student who, or I had a classmate, and they wrote literally all about Star Trek. It was amazing. And just to be able to have that in an environment that's like a school environment where like I actually have never been to public school, but I'm pretty sure that you couldn't just walk up into a public school and like hand your teacher a full like 5-page essay about Star Trek. And it was great to be able to have that like in a place like I chose to write about like America. And it's so great to be able to be in an environment where those very stark differences are both accepted. Like you have someone who wants to write about something that may be fictional, but they're completely right. It's a perfect essay, perfect grammar, perfect format and everything. And then you have me, and I just decide to write about the horrible things in America. And to be able to have like that kind of goes back into what I was saying about like the conversations that we have in class, like just to be able to bring something like that into class and have true conversations about both and legitimate conversation and to be able to move on. It's great. Like the fact that, you know, I'm able to bring in, because I wouldn't consider myself a political person, but I definitely have a lot of strong views about political things. And that, like last year, I was able to write about those things in a very academic way, but also keep keep a certain amount of emotion in, and it be able to really truly be talked about and understood. I think that's really the main thing that I appreciate, is that understanding that, you know, you get from your class, um even if they don't agree. So I just think that with the essays, you have so much freedom. Like it's part of my difficulty last year with one of my essays was the fact that I had too much freedom. Like I couldn't decide what I wanted to write about. And so I ended up doing an essay nearly last minute because I had like 5 ideas and 5 drafts, and I ended up settling on one of them and finishing it. But it it was it was great to be able to know that like I could go and talk to my mentor, and be like, okay, I have these. It was hilarious because I had Miss Leia as a mentor and a teacher, and that was my only class that I was taking last year. So it was great because I would be like, Miss Leia, I need help. I don't know what I'm going to choose. She's like, well, you should choose this one because this one has like best question, or, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I was able to really have like that guidance. I mean, it makes sense because, you know, they're your guide, they're your mentor. And so I was able to have fun with doing something that I did not necessarily want to do and just have and kind of bask in that free will.
Tell us about the SAT score experience then.
So this year, I feel like really my main difference, I would have to say, would be my math, because last year, I believe last year was my first time taking the SATs, or even like the pre-SATs, or I forget what they're called. But I was able to take them last year, and part of the issue last year was the math. Like I believe a lot of students last year, especially in my class, we would talk and be like, I went to the math part and I didn't know what I was looking at. And so you would just guess random answers until you were done. But this year, because of the fact that I've been able to study, like really study and move ahead a lot, because I truly do believe that I'm doing some geometry work, even though I'm technically in Algebra 1, but it's okay. I was able to go into the math part and be like, I know these words, okay? I know some of these words, and I can infer what to do from here. And honestly, I think that saved me because there are certain things like how to find a radius, how to find this fancy word. Like, and I was able to be like, okay, I know kind of how to do these things. And I just really sat down and was like, okay, I'm going to spend 3 hours that it takes because I want to get a good score. And not because like here they pressure you to get a good score. I really do appreciate that. Like I like that, you know, whenever we start the SATs, it's just like this, whatever score you get, it truly really doesn't matter as much for, you know, as in the school. like it matters to you because, and it should, because that's like you now know like certain areas that you need to grow on and things like that. And so being able to understand last year, like, okay, I need help with my math. Reading comprehension, I will say, I hope this doesn't sound like a brag, but like it's always been pretty easy for me when it comes to reading comprehension. Um, and honestly, that's the part of the SATs that I look forward to the most. Because I get to like read snippets of stories that I've never read before. Like there's a book that I was so upset that I forgot the name of, but I read it and I was so captivated in the story. I was like, oh, this is amazing. But just being able to get out of your head, like even just the idea of being captivated in a question, like I was able to get the idea out of my head, like, oh, this is the SATs and I don't want to do them. Like I was like, okay, no, like this is fun. This is just a big old test puzzle, and I love tests. So being able to just go through and take my time, and like obviously, or not obviously, but like both times that I've taken the SATs, they've been timed, but really it's okay because you can always pause the timer. So I'm really able to sit there. Like I think I took this time like 3 hours just to work on the, especially the math portion, and really understand the material. And some things I was able to like read about afterwards, so I ended up learning new things. And it was just amazing because honestly I did not think I was going to get that good of a score. But when I got the scores back, I was like, that's I don't know how I did that, but okay. It was great.
Terrific. You touched on it a bit in terms of flexibility at TSE, the ability to go through Algebra 1 at your own pace and earn credit for it, but then also join geometry when you want to, when you're able to, again, self-paced. And I think that there's just so little value in the arbitrary semester where where you have to take like 4 months of a certain class, even if you're breezing through it, and then it's just complete waste of time. So, how has that flexibility served you in other ways at TSE, or maybe it's just specifically in terms of math?
I would say like mainly in math because I it's just great to be able to have that sense of, okay, I can take my time, but also I can speed up. Like it's great to be able to have that plan because I've had a lot of friends who were in public school and they're like, man, I hate school. You find out because they're being held back because the semester isn't over and they need to finish this certain amount of time for a certain subject when they're 2 3 grades ahead. And I think here you're able to like establish like, okay, I think I'm further than what we're doing here. And the guide is like, okay, so you're ahead. Great. Let's get you into these sections or into these programs so that you can actually stay or go where you need to be. It's really funny because there's someone I watch on YouTube, and she's actually been a big inspiration for me and what I want to do. She graduated high school at like 15, which I'm 15, but um it's and she like got into college. It was amazing. She was homeschooled, and to be able to see someone like that and just be like, oh my goodness, okay, I need a program that can help me do that. And like being able to have that flexibility here where it's like, okay, this is your plan. We all, as all of your guides and mentors, we understand your plan, and we're going to help you further try to like push you towards that. Yeah, just really making that an established factor when it comes to like the flexibility and things like that.
Well, Michaelah, I'll let you get on to your class, which is just in a couple minutes. It was such a pleasure, and I can't wait to see what you accomplish all in the next year. Thank you so much for your time today.